The marketplace stank of desperation and rotting vegetables. I kept my head down as I navigated through the crowd, my threadbare cloak doing little to protect me from the autumn chill that had settled over the border town of Greyhollow. My stomach cramped with hunger I hadn't eaten in 2 days, but the 3 copper coins clutched in my palm were meant for medicine, not food. My name is Kira, and I am nothing. An Omega without a pack, without family, without protection, in a world that measured worth by the strength of your wolf. Except I didn't have a wolf. Not anymore. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The rejection mark on my shoulder, a twisted scar that burned silver under moonlight, was proof that my former pack had severed my connection to my wolf 3 years ago when I'd failed to shift on my 18th birthday. Blocked wolf, they'd called me. Defective. The alpha had performed the rejection ceremony himself, cutting me off from the pack bond and leaving me to survive alone in human form. I'd been wandering ever since, moving from town to town, taking whatever work I could find and trying to remain invisible. Invisibility was survival for someone like me. I reached the apothecary's stall and carefully counted out my coins for the feverfew and willow bark I needed. Old Marin, the human woman I shared a boarding house room with, had taken ill last week. She was the closest thing to family I had now, and I wouldn't let her suffer if I could help it. "That all you're buying, girl?" the merchant asked, eyeing my thin frame with barely concealed disdain. He could probably smell that I was wolf-kind, even if I couldn't shift. Got some day-old bread I could let go cheap. My mouth watered at the thought, but I shook my head. "Just the herbs, please." As I turned to leave, a commotion erupted near the town square. Raised voices, the sound of something heavy hitting the ground, cruel laughter. I should have kept walking, should have minded my own business as I'd learned to do. But something pulled me toward the noise, some instinct I couldn't name. The crowd had formed a circle around a vendor's cart. In the center, a small figure huddled on the ground, while a massive man, clearly a wolf by his size, and the way others gave him space, loomed over them. "Filthy little thief," the man snarled. "You think you can steal from me?" "I'm sorry," a child's voice whimpered. "I was so hungry." "Please, I didn't mean—" The man's hand shot out, grabbing the child by the collar and hauling them upright. That's when I saw him clearly a boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with matted dark hair and clothes that hung off his skeletal frame. His face was streaked with dirt and tears, but even from a distance, I could see something unusual about him. His eyes. They were pale silver, almost white, and they glowed faintly even in the daylight. Royal bloodline. The thought came unbidden. Only the oldest, most powerful wolf bloodlines had eyes like that. "I'll teach you what we do to thieves," the vendor growled, raising his fist. I moved before I could think better of it, pushing through the crowd and throwing myself between the man and the child. "Stop." The word came out stronger than I felt. "He's just a child." The vendor's eyes narrowed as he took me in my worn clothes, my obvious weakness, the way I trembled despite trying to appear brave. "And who the hell are you?" "Someone who's asking you to show mercy." I forced myself to meet his gaze, even though every instinct screamed at me to lower my eyes, to submit. He said he was hungry. Surely that's not worth violence. "He stole a meat pie," the vendor spat. "Cost me 2 silver pieces, that pie. You gonna pay for it, little Omega?" The way he said Omega made it sound like a curse. I felt the weight of the crowd's stares, felt their judgment, and their anticipation of violence. Behind me, the child whimpered again, and something in that sound shattered the last of my hesitation. "Yes," I heard myself say. "I'll pay for it." A ripple of surprise went through the onlookers. The vendor's expression shifted from anger to calculating greed. "You got 2 silver pieces?" I didn't. I had nothing except the herbs clutched in my other hand and the clothes on my back. But I couldn't let this child be beaten, possibly killed, for the crime of being hungry. "I can work," I offered, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I'm a healer. I know herbs and remedies. I could work off the debt." The vendor laughed, a harsh sound that held no humor. "I don't need a healer, but there's a labor camp north of here that pays good money for workers." His smile turned cruel. "Especially pretty little Omegas. They're always looking for more hands in the silver mines. Dangerous work that most don't last more than a year or two. The silver mines, I'd heard stories about them, brutal conditions, workers treated as disposable, many dying from cave-ins or the toxic dust that filled the tunnels. It was essentially a death sentence. But when I looked down at the child, at those strange silver eyes looking up at me with desperate hope, I knew I didn't have a choice. "How long?" I asked quietly. "How long would I have to work to pay off 2 silver pieces?" The vendor's grin widened. "Oh, let's say 3 years. With interest, of course." 3 years. I'd be lucky to survive one. But the alternative was watching this child be beaten, perhaps killed, while I did nothing. "I'll do it," I said. "I'll go to the mines. But you let the boy go, right now." The vendor studied me for a long moment, then shrugged. "Deal. Get the contracts, Bren," he called to someone in the crowd. As a man hurried off to fetch the papers that would bind me to 3 years of servitude, I knelt down beside the child. Up close, I could see that beneath the dirt and fear, he had fine features, high cheekbones, a straight nose, that pale skin that seemed to glow faintly in the sunlight. "What's your name?" I asked softly. "Matthias," he whispered. "Are you really going to save me?" "Yes," I promised, reaching out to gently wipe a tear from his cheek. "You're going to be okay." His small hand grabbed mine, and the moment our skin touched, something happened. A shock of warmth flooded through me, starting at the point of contact and spreading throughout my body. For just an instant, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years, the presence of my wolf, stirring deep inside me. Then it was gone, leaving me gasping. Matthias stared at me with wide eyes. "You feel different," he said. "You smell like pack, like home." Before I could process his words, the contracts arrived. The vendor thrust a pen into my hand, pointing to where I needed to sign. I couldn't read most of the fancy script. I'd never learned proper letters, but I understood enough. 3 years of my life in exchange for 1 stolen meat pie. I signed. The vendor snatched the paper away immediately, his expression triumphant. "Excellent. The mine transport leaves in an hour. Better say your goodbyes, girl." He turned to the crowd, which was already starting to disperse. "Show's over, folks." I turned back to Matthias, who still held my hand in both of his. "Listen to me carefully," I said urgently. "Do you have anyone? Family? Anyone looking for you?" He shook his head, and fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. "I don't remember. I woke up in the woods 3 days ago, and I couldn't remember anything except my name. I've been trying to find food, but everyone chases me away or—" His voice broke. "Amnesia." The poor child had amnesia, and had been surviving alone in a border town full of rogues and criminals. My heart ached for him. "Where will you go?" I asked, knowing I had no right to ask. No, way to help, but unable to just leave him. I don't know," Matthias admitted. Then he looked up at me with those luminous silver eyes. "Could I stay with you? Just until the transport comes? Please?" I should have said no. Should have protected what little time I had left before beginning my sentence, but I found myself nodding. "Come on. I need to get these herbs to someone, and then we'll find you some proper food." His face lit up with the first real smile I'd seen from him, and despite everything, despite the fact that I'd just sold myself into 3 years of brutal servitude, I felt something warm bloom in my chest. We made our way back through the marketplace, Matthias staying close to my side. Now that the immediate danger had passed, I could feel the weight of what I'd done settling over me. 3 years in the silver mines. I would likely die there, forgotten and alone, just another nameless Omega who'd made a foolish choice. But when I looked down at Matthias, at the way he trustingly held my hand, I couldn't regret it. "Why did you help me?" he asked as we walked. "You don't even know me." "Because you needed help," I answered simply. "And because no child should be beaten for the crime of being hungry." "You're different from other grown-ups," Matthias observed. "You're kind. You smell kind too, like rain and wild flowers." "Like rain and wild flowers." I smiled despite myself. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My scent is the least remarkable thing about me, I promise. No, he said with surprising certainty. You're remarkable. I can feel it. We reached the boarding house where I lived, a decrepit building that leaned slightly to one side, run by a sour-faced woman who charged too much for rooms that barely kept out the cold. I led Matthias up the narrow stairs to the tiny room I shared with Marin. The old woman was asleep when we entered, her breathing labored but steady. I quickly prepared the feverfew and willow bark into a tea, adding a touch of honey from the small jar I kept hidden under my mattress. When it was ready, I gently woke Marin and helped her drink. "Who's the boy?" she asked, her voice weak but curious as she noticed Matthias hovering near the door. "A friend," I said softly. He needed help. Marin studied Matthias with roamy eyes that saw more than most people gave her credit for. "Royal blood?" she murmured. "I can tell, even human as I am. Those eyes. I've only seen eyes like that once before, years ago, when the High Alpha visited the capital." My stomach dropped. "Marin, you're in trouble, girl," she interrupted, her gaze shifting to me. "Bigger trouble than whatever foolish thing you did at the market today. That child is someone important, someone who's being looked for. He has amnesia," I explained. "He doesn't remember anything except his name." Marin's expression softened with pity, not for Matthias, but for me. "Then you've stepped into the middle of something dangerous. Royal wolves don't just forget who they are. Someone made him forget. Someone who won't want him found." A chill ran down my spine at her words, but before I could respond, Matthias spoke up from the doorway. "I'm hungry," he said plaintively. "Kira promised me food." "There's bread in the box by the window," Marin said, settling back against her pillow. "And some cheese. Help yourself, boy." While Matthias eagerly retrieved the food, Marin caught my hand. "How long?" she asked quietly. 3 years, I admitted. "The mines." Her grip tightened. "You foolish, wonderful girl. 3 years for a stolen pie?" "For a child who needed help," I corrected. Marin's eyes glistened with tears. "I'll be dead before you get back. Who's going to make sure you're remembered? Who's going to tell your story?" "It doesn't matter," I said, though my throat tightened. "I'm no one. I don't need to be remembered." "Everyone deserves to be remembered," Marin insisted, "especially those brave enough to be kind when the world has been nothing but cruel to them." Matthias had devoured half the bread and was working on the cheese, making small sounds of contentment. Watching him eat with such obvious relief made my decision feel worthwhile, even knowing what it would cost me. "There's less than an hour before the transport comes," I said, standing. "I need to pack what little I have." It didn't take long. I owned almost nothing: a spare dress, a few personal items, my mother's journal of healing recipes. That was all I had left of my family. I wrapped everything in a cloth bundle and tied it securely. Matthias watched me with those unsettling silver eyes. "You're really leaving because of me," he said quietly. "It wasn't a question. I'm leaving because I made a choice," I corrected gently. "A choice I'd make again." "I don't want you to go," he said, his voice small and lost. "You're the first person who's been nice to me, the first person who doesn't look at me like I'm wrong somehow." I knelt down beside him, placing my hands on his small shoulders. "Listen to me, Matthias. You are not wrong. You are valuable and precious, and deserving of kindness. Don't let anyone ever make you believe otherwise." He threw his arms around my neck, hugging me with desperate strength. And again, I felt it, that strange warmth, that sense of my wolf stirring somewhere deep inside where it had been locked away for 3 years. "I'll find you," Matthias whispered against my shoulder. "When I remember who I am, I'll come find you, I promise." "Don't make promises you can't keep," I said gently. But something in my chest ached at his words. A horn sounded from the street below, the transport arriving. My time was up. Marin struggled to sit up as I gathered my bundle. "May the moon goddess watch over you, child," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "May she guide you back to us." "Take care of yourself," I replied, knowing she wouldn't. Knowing this was likely the last time I'd see her. I took Matthias's hand one last time and led him downstairs. The transport was a large covered wagon with iron bars, more prison cart than passenger vehicle. Several other people were already inside, all of them with the same hollow-eyed look of the desperate and damned. The driver, a scarred man with dead eyes, jerked his head toward the wagon. "Get in. We leave in 5 minutes." I turned to Matthias for one last goodbye, but before I could speak, the boy grabbed my hand with both of his. "Don't forget me," he pleaded. "Please, don't forget me." "Never," I promised. "Be safe, Matthias. Find someone who can help you remember who you are." I climbed into the wagon, finding a space on the hard wooden bench. Through the bars, I could see Matthias standing in the street, tears streaming down his face as he watched me leave. The driver cracked his whip, and the horses lurched forward. As we began to move, I kept my eyes on that small figure until distance and tears blurred my vision and I could no longer see him. I had traded my freedom, possibly my life, for a child I'd known for barely an hour. Any rational person would call it foolish, but as I sat in that prison cart, heading toward 3 years of brutal servitude, I felt no regret, only hope that Matthias would survive, that he would find his way home, wherever that was, and a strange certainty that our paths would cross again. The journey to the silver mines took 3 days, 3 days of being jostled in that iron-barred wagon, sleeping on hard wooden benches, eating stale bread and drinking water that tasted of rust. 3 days to contemplate the choice I'd made and wonder about the strange silver-eyed boy I'd saved. The other prisoners, because that's what we were, really barely spoke. There were 7 of us in total. 3 men who'd been convicted of theft, a woman who'd killed her abusive mate in self-defense, an elderly wolf who'd accumulated gambling debts he couldn't pay, and twin brothers who'd been caught poaching on royal hunting grounds. None of them were Omegas. None of them had that particular vulnerability that came from being at the bottom of the pack hierarchy with no wolf to protect them. They gave me a wide berth, which suited me fine. I'd learned long ago that solitude was safer than companionship for someone like me. On the second night, as we made camp beside the road, the woman, her name was Isla, approached me with surprising gentleness. "You're the one who traded herself for that child at the market," she said. It wasn't a question. Word traveled fast, even among prisoners. That was either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, I admitted, accepting the water skin she offered. Isla studied me with dark, knowing eyes. She was beta-born, I could tell from her scent, and probably in her 40s, though hard living had aged her. "The mines will eat you alive, girl. Pretty little Omega like you. You won't last a month." "Then I won't last a month," I said, quietly. "But at least I'll die knowing I did something that mattered." She shook her head, something like respect flickering across her weathered face. "You got a death wish? Or you just don't value yourself at all?" "Maybe a bit of both," I admitted. Isla settled beside me, close enough that I could feel warmth radiating from her larger frame. "Listen, the mines are controlled by a wolf named Garrett. He's a rogue alpha, no pack, no honor, just greed. He makes his money selling the silver we dig up and doesn't much care how many workers die in the process." My stomach knotted with fear, but I kept my expression neutral. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you remind me of someone," Isla said softly. "My daughter. She had your same stupid, selfless streak. Got herself killed trying to protect a friend from her abusive mate." Her voice hardened. "She was 20 years old, had her whole life ahead of her, but she threw it away for someone else's battle." "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't be sorry. Be smart." Isla leaned closer, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "In the mines there are 2 types of workers, those who dig and those who process. The diggers go into the tunnels. Dangerous work, lots of cave-ins, toxic dust that destroys your lungs. Most diggers don't survive their contracts." I swallowed hard. "And the processors? They stay above ground, sorting and cleaning the raw silver ore. Safer, but still hard work. Garrett usually assigns the weakest workers to processing because dead workers can't make him money." She fixed me with an intense stare. "When we arrive, don't try to act tough. Be as small and weak as you actually are. Make him think you'd be useless in the tunnels. It might save your life." "Why are you helping me?" I asked, confused by this unexpected kindness. Isla's expression softened. Because my daughter would have done the same thing you did. Would have thrown away her freedom for a hungry child without a second thought. And because someone should survive this hellhole. And it might as well be someone with a kind heart. That night, lying on the hard ground with my thin blanket pulled tight, I thought about Matthias. Was he safe? Had he found food and shelter? Did he still remember me? Or had I already faded from his mind like a half-forgotten dream? And I thought about what Marin had said, that Matthias was someone important, someone who'd been made to forget. If that was true, then there were people looking for him, powerful people who would want him back. The thought should have comforted me. Instead, it filled me with an unease I couldn't name. We arrived at the silver mines on the afternoon of the third day. The complex was larger than I'd expected, a sprawling operation carved into the side of a mountain, with wooden buildings clustered around the main entrance to the tunnels. Dozens of workers moved through the compound, all of them thin and hollow-eyed, marked by exhaustion and despair. The wagon rolled to a stop in front of the largest building, and a man emerged. This had to be Garrett. He was massive, easily 6.5 feet tall, with the thick, muscular build of a wolf who spent time in both human and shifted form. His hair was dark, shot through with silver, and his eyes were the cold gray of a winter storm. "Fresh meat," he announced, his voice carrying across the compound. Several workers paused in their tasks to watch as we were herded out of the wagon. "Line up. Let me see what I've got to work with." We arranged ourselves in a rough line while Garrett walked slowly down it, assessing each of us with the detached interest of someone evaluating livestock. He paused at each person, making notes on a wooden clipboard. When he reached me, his expression shifted to something that made my skin crawl. Well, he murmured, circling me slowly. "What do we have here?" "A pretty little Omega, all alone." "What's your story, girl?" "Debt payment," I answered, keeping my voice steady despite my fear. 3 years. Garrett's eyebrows rose. 3 years for what? You kill someone?" "Stole a meat pie," I said quietly. He laughed, a sound that held no warmth. "A meat pie? Seems excessive." He leaned closer, and I caught his scent predatory, cruel, tinged with something that reminded me of rot. "But I'm not complaining. You'll do nicely in the processing house. Can't have something as delicate as you wasting away in the tunnels." Relief flooded through me. Isla's advice had worked. But then Garrett's hand shot out, gripping my chin and forcing my face up to meet his gaze. "Of course," he continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "There are other ways for a pretty Omega to earn better treatment here. Ways that don't involve backbreaking labor. You interested?" The implication was clear and disgusting. I jerked my chin from his grasp, taking a step back. "I'll work in processing," I said firmly. His expression darkened, for a moment, but then he shrugged. "Your loss, but don't come crying to me when you're too exhausted to stand." He turned to address the group. "You'll be assigned bunks in the workers' quarters. Work begins at dawn and ends at dusk. You get 2 meals a day, breakfast and dinner. Break any rules, and you'll be punished. Try to escape, and I'll hunt you down myself. Questions?" No one spoke. Good. Dismissed. The next 3 weeks blurred together in a haze of exhausting labor. Processing silver ore was brutal work, sorting through piles of rock, identifying pieces that contained silver, crushing them to extract the precious metal, breathing in dust that made my lungs burn and my eyes water. But Isla had been right. It was better than the tunnels. I saw the diggers return each evening, covered in grime, coughing violently, their eyes hollow with exhaustion. Some didn't return at all. Word would spread that there'd been a cave-in, that 3 workers had died, that their bodies couldn't be recovered. New workers would arrive within days to replace them. I kept my head down and worked hard. Made no friends, drew no attention. Survival was all that mattered. But at night, lying in my bunk in the cramped women's quarters, I thought about Matthias, about those strange silver eyes and the way my wolf had stirred when we touched, about his promise to find me once he remembered who he was. I told myself it was foolish to hope, that I should focus on surviving each day rather than dreaming of rescue. But hope was all I had left. 4 weeks into my sentence, everything changed. It started with the arrival of new workers, except these weren't prisoners. They were guards. Elite guards, wearing the insignia of the High Alpha himself. 50 of them, all heavily armed, all moving with the coordinated precision of trained warriors. Garrett met them at the compound entrance, and even from a distance, I could see the fear in his posture. The lead guard, a massive silver wolf in human form, thrust a piece of parchment at him. Garrett read it, and the blood drained from his face. "What's happening?" whispered Isla, who'd been assigned to processing alongside me. "Why are the High Alpha's guards here?" "I don't know," I murmured, but my heart had started racing. The High Alpha. Marin had mentioned him when she'd seen Matthias, had mentioned that silver eyes like his. No, it couldn't be. The guards began searching the compound, entering every building, questioning workers. They moved with desperate urgency, as if looking for something or someone incredibly precious. When they reached the processing house, I kept my head down and continued working, but I felt the weight of someone's gaze and looked up to find one of the guards staring directly at me. He was younger than the others, maybe in his mid-20s, with dark hair and the kind of handsome features that probably made Omegas sigh. But his eyes held no warmth as he approached me. "You," he said. "What's your name?" "Kira," I answered quietly. "Where are you from?" "Nowhere. Everywhere. I'm packless." His nose flared slightly, scenting me. "You're Omega. Rejected?" I nodded, heat flooding my face at the admission. "How long have you been here?" 4 weeks. He studied me intently, and I had the uncomfortable feeling he was looking for something specific. "Have you seen or heard anything unusual? Any talk of a child? A boy with silver eyes?" My heart stopped. "Matthias. They were looking for Matthias." "No," I lied, the word coming out steadier than I felt. "I've seen nothing unusual." The guard's eyes narrowed, as if he sensed my deception. But before he could press further, a commotion erupted from outside the building. Shouting, the sound of snarling wolves, the distinctive crack of bones breaking. We rushed outside to find chaos. The lead guard had shifted into a massive silver wolf and had Garrett pinned to the ground, teeth at his throat. Other guards surrounded them, weapons drawn, while workers scrambled to get out of the way. "Where is he?" the silver wolf snarled, his voice distorted by his wolf form but still understandable. "Where is the prince?" "Prince?" The word echoed in my mind. Matthias was a prince, the High Alpha's son, and I'd left him alone in a border town, vulnerable and unprotected, while I was dragged to the mines. Horror washed over me, cold and absolute. What had I done? Garrett was babbling, blood running from where the guard's teeth had broken skin. "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any prince. Check the records, no child has been brought here." The silver wolf released him with a disgusted snarl, shifting back to human form. "Search everything," he commanded his guards. "Every building, every tunnel. If Prince Matthias was brought here, I want to know." They tore the compound apart, searched every corner, every hiding place, questioned every worker, every guard, but of course, they found nothing. Because Matthias wasn't here. He was in Greyhollow, alone and lost, with no memory of who he was or that an entire kingdom was searching for him. I had to tell them, had to admit that I'd seen him, helped him, left him behind. But fear locked the words in my throat. What would happen if I came forward? Would they believe me? Or would they think I was lying to gain favor, to escape this place? And what if telling them put Matthias in danger? Marin had said someone had made him forget. Someone who wouldn't want him found. If that person learned the prince was in Greyhollow, the internal debate raged in my mind as I watched the guards conclude their search. The silver wolf, I heard someone call him Commander Thorn, was clearly frustrated, his jaw tight with barely controlled emotion. "He's not here," one of the guards reported. "We've searched everything. No sign of the prince." Thorn's hands clenched into fists. "Then we move on to the next location. The High Alpha wants his son found, and we won't stop until..." He was interrupted by the arrival of another wolf, this one arriving at a dead run and skidding to a halt in front of him. "Commander," the newcomer gasped, breathless. "Message from the capital. The prince has been found. My heart leaped into my throat. Where? Thorn demanded. Greyhollow, a border town 2 days north of here. Local watch found him hiding in an abandoned building. He's alive, sir. Unharmed, but with no memory of how he got there or what happened to him. Relief so intense it made me dizzy, swept through me. Matthias was safe. He'd been found. Prepare the transport, Thorn ordered immediately. We leave within the hour. I want our fastest riders heading to Greyhollow now to secure the area. He turned to address the gathered workers. If any of you have information about what happened to Prince Matthias, speak now. The High Alpha will reward you handsomely. I opened my mouth wanting to tell them about the market, about the meat pie, about how Matthias had looked at me with those silver eyes, but Isla caught my arm, her grip tight and warning. Don't, she whispered. You think they'll reward you? You're a rejected Omega, who left a royal prince alone in a border town. At best, they'll ignore you. At worst, they'll punish you for not protecting him properly. She was right. I knew she was right. But it still felt like cowardice to stay silent. The guards left as quickly as they'd arrived, taking their desperate urgency with them. Garrett emerged from his office looking shaken, barking orders to get everyone back to work, to make up for lost time. Life at the mines returned to its brutal routine. But I couldn't stop thinking about Matthias, about whether he remembered me, about whether he'd keep his promise to find me. Once he knew who he was. 2 more weeks passed, then 3, then a month. I began to accept that I would likely die here, forgotten, that my sacrifice had been worth, and that Matthias was safe, home with his family, but that I would never see the result of my choice, never know if he thought of me, or if I'd become just another hazy memory from his lost time. Then, on a cold morning as autumn gave way to winter, everything changed again. I was in the processing house, sorting through a fresh load of ore, when someone screamed, not a scream of pain or fear, but of pure shock. I looked up to see workers running toward the compound entrance. Curious, despite myself, I followed. A contingent of wolves had arrived, not guards this time, but nobles. I could tell from their fine clothes, their proud bearing, the way power radiated from them like heat. At their center rode a man on a massive black horse. Even from a distance, I could feel his presence. It pressed against my senses like a physical weight, making it hard to breathe. This was an alpha. Not just any alpha, but one of immense power, the High Alpha himself. He dismounted with fluid grace, and I got my first clear look at him. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a muscular build that spoke of countless hours training for battle. His hair was dark with silver at the temples, pulled back from a face that could have been carved from stone. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes that were the exact same pale silver as Matthias's. His son. This was Matthias's father, and beside him, holding his hand and looking around with wide, excited eyes, was Matthias himself. The boy had been cleaned up, dressed in fine clothes, his dark hair neatly trimmed. He looked healthy and well-fed, nothing like the starving child I'd met in the marketplace. But those eyes were the same, that unique silver that marked him as royalty. Garrett rushed forward, bowing so deeply his forehead nearly touched the ground. High Alpha, this is an unexpected honor. How may I serve you? The High Alpha. I heard someone whisper. His name was Aldrich. Barely glanced at Garrett. His attention was focused on the workers, scanning the crowd with an intensity that made my skin prickle. My son has asked to visit this location, Aldrich said, his voice deep and commanding. He believes someone here helped him during his time of need, someone he wishes to thank. Matthias tugged on his father's hand, bouncing with excitement. She's here, Papa. I can smell her. Rain and wildflowers, I'd know her scent anywhere. My breath caught. He remembered me. He'd kept his promise. Matthias's gaze swept the crowd, and then locked directly on me. His face lit up with pure joy. Kira! He shouted, breaking free from his father's grasp and running toward me. I stood frozen as he barreled through the crowd, throwing his arms around my waist when he reached me. I knew I'd find you. I promised I'd find you. Every eye in the compound was now fixed on me, including the High Alphas. Aldrich moved through the crowd with predatory grace, workers scrambling to get out of his way. He stopped a few feet from me, and the full weight of his attention fell on me like a physical force. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Power radiated from him in waves, the mark of an alpha so strong he could command hundreds of wolves without question. His silver eyes studied me with an intensity that made me want to look away, to submit, to show my throat in surrender. But something in me, some stubborn core of pride that had survived 3 years of rejection and a month of brutal labor, made me meet his gaze steadily. "You're Kira," he said. "Not a question." "Yes, High Alpha," I answered, my voice steadier than I felt. "My son tells me you saved his life." Again, not a question. "That you traded your freedom for his safety when he was accused of theft at a market in Greyhollow." "I did what anyone should have done," I said quietly. A ghost of a smile touched Aldrich's lips. "But no one else did. Only you." He gestured to Garrett, who'd been hovering nervously nearby. "This woman's contract is dissolved immediately. She's free to go." Relief swept through me, so intense my knees nearly buckled. Free. I was free. But then Aldrich continued, and his next words changed everything. "You will return to the capital with us. My son has not stopped talking about you since we found him, and I owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid. I would offer you a place in my household, a position, protection. And if I refuse?" I heard myself ask. Every wolf in the vicinity gasped at my audacity. One didn't question the High Alpha. One didn't refuse his offers. But Aldrich didn't look angry. Instead, his expression shifted to something that might have been respect. "Then you would be the first person in a century to do so," he said quietly. "But I would not force you. The choice, as always, would be yours." I looked down at Matthias, who was still clinging to me, his silver eyes pleading. I thought about Marin's words that this child was important, that helping him would drag me into something bigger than myself. I thought about the mines, about the 3 years of brutal servitude I'd nearly faced, about being forgotten, dying alone and unmissed. And I thought about that strange warmth I'd felt when Matthias touched me, the stirring of my wolf that I hadn't felt in 3 years. "I'll come," I said finally. "But I have a condition." Aldrich's eyebrows rose, clearly unused to being given conditions. "Name it. There's an old woman in Greyhollow. Human. Her name is Marin, and she's ill. I want her brought to the capital, given the best medical care available. She was kind to me when no one else was. I won't abandon her." For a long moment, Aldrich studied me. Then he nodded once. "Done. My healers will retrieve her today." He turned to address the compound at large. "Let it be known throughout my territory this woman, Kira, is under my direct protection. To harm her is to harm me. To disrespect her is to disrespect my bloodline. She is to be treated with the honor due to one who saved the life of my heir." The formal proclamation sent ripples of shock through the crowd. To place a rejected Omega under direct royal protection was unprecedented. Matthias squeezed my hand, and I felt it again, that warmth, that sense of my wolf stirring. "Come on," he said excitedly. "Wait till you see our home. It's huge. And Papa says you can have rooms right next to mine. And we have the best food, and the library has thousands of books." And as Matthias chattered happily, pulling me toward the waiting horses, I glanced back one last time at the silver mines, at the life I'd nearly lost to. Isla stood at the edge of the crowd, and when our eyes met, she smiled. A real smile, full of warmth, and something that might have been pride. I smiled back, a silent thank you for her kindness. Then I let Matthias lead me toward whatever future awaited me at the High Alpha's court. I didn't know then that my connection to Matthias went deeper than a simple gratitude. Didn't understand that the stirring of my wolf wasn't coincidence but recognition. Didn't realize that the High Alpha's intense interest in me wasn't just about repaying a debt. And I certainly didn't know that within days, I would discover that everything I thought I knew about myself, about my rejection, about my blocked wolf, was built on lies. But I would learn, and when I did, nothing would ever be the same. The journey to the capital took 5 days, and every moment felt surreal. I rode in a covered carriage with Matthias and 2 of Aldrich's personal guards, a stern woman named Seraphine with ice-blue eyes, and a younger man called Rowan who couldn't quite hide his curiosity about the rejected Omega, who'd somehow earned the High Alpha's protection. Matthias hadn't left my side since we'd departed the mines. He insisted on sitting pressed against me, holding my hand, chattering endlessly about everything he'd remembered since regaining his memory. I was practicing shifting in the woods, he explained for the third time, his enthusiasm never waning. Papa says I'm not supposed to go into the forest alone, but I wanted to surprise him by mastering my wolf form. Then these men came out of nowhere, 3 of them, all wearing masks. They grabbed me, and one of them pressed this cloth over my nose and mouth. It smelled awful, like bitter herbs and something else I couldn't identify. My healer's instincts stirred. That sounds like nightshade, mixed with wolfsbane. It's a powerful sedative that can suppress wolf abilities and cause memory loss. Seraphine's sharp gaze fixed on me. You know poisons? I know herbs and remedies, I corrected carefully. My mother was a healer. She taught me to identify plants by scent and effect. Nightshade and wolfsbane together would explain the amnesia and why Matthias couldn't shift back to human form when he was trapped by the river. The High Alpha's healers came to the same conclusion. Seraphine said slowly, studying me with new interest. But it took them 2 days of examination to determine what had been used. You identified it in seconds from description alone. I shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. It's not that remarkable. Any trained healer would know. Most trained healers wouldn't, Rowan interrupted. The combination is rare, difficult to create. Whoever took the prints knew exactly what they were doing. A chill ran through me. You think it was planned? Not just a random kidnapping? We know it was planned, Seraphine replied grimly. The men who took Prince Matthias were found dead 3 days after his disappearance. Poisoned. Someone wanted to ensure they couldn't reveal who'd hired them. Matthias pressed closer to me, his earlier excitement fading into something that looked like fear. Papa says someone in the court wants to hurt me. That's why he brought all these guards when he came to find you. He's afraid they might try again. My protective instincts flared, and I wrapped my arm around his thin shoulders. No one's gonna hurt you while I'm here. The words came out with more conviction than I'd intended, and I felt something stir deep inside me, that same warmth I'd experienced when we first touched, but stronger now, more insistent. Seraphine and Rowan exchanged a glance I couldn't interpret. You feel protective of him, Seraphine observed. Unusually so, for someone you barely know. He's a child who needed help, I said defensively. Of course I feel protective. It's more than that, Rowan said quietly. I can see it in how you move around him, how you position yourself between him and potential threats, even us, and we're his sworn guards. It's instinctive, the way a pack member protects their own. I'm not pack, I reminded them, the old wound of rejection aching. I'm packless. My wolf was severed from me 3 years ago. Was it? Seraphine's question hung in the air like a challenge. Or was it merely blocked? Before I could process that cryptic statement, the carriage rolled to a stop. We'd reached an inn for the night, a well-appointed establishment that clearly catered to noble travelers. Aldrich had ridden ahead with most of his guards and was already waiting in the courtyard, his imposing figure drawing stares from other guests. His silver eyes found me immediately as I stepped from the carriage, and I felt the impact of his attention like a physical touch. There was something in the way he looked at me, something intense and searching that made my breath catch. Matthias, he said, his deep voice gentler than I'd heard it before. Come, let Kira rest. You've talked her ear off for 5 days. But Papa, Matthias protested. Now, son. The command in his tone was unmistakable. Matthias reluctantly released my hand and went to his father, though he kept looking back at me with pleading eyes. Aldrich placed a hand on his son's shoulder, but his gaze remained fixed on me. Seraphine will show you to your room. We dine in an hour. I expect you to join us. It wasn't a request. The room I was given was the finest I'd ever seen, larger than the entire boarding house room I'd shared with Marin, with an actual bed covered in soft furs, a washing area with hot water already prepared, and windows that overlooked a garden. Laid out on the bed was a dress, not the worn, practical clothing I'd been given at the mines, but something beautiful, deep forest green with delicate embroidery at the neck and sleeves. Beside it were soft leather boots that actually looked like they'd fit. I touched the dress with trembling fingers, hardly believing it was meant for me. The High Alpha ordered it made during our journey, Seraphine said from the doorway. He has a seamstress among his retinue who worked through the nights to complete it. He was very specific about the color, said it would complement your eyes. Heat flooded my face. That was unnecessary. Perhaps. Seraphine stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. Or perhaps the High Alpha sees something in you that he wishes to honor. I turned to face her, confused by the intensity in her expression. I don't understand what you mean. Don't you? She moved closer, her ice blue eyes searching my face. Tell me about your rejection. How did it happen? The question caught me off guard. Why does that matter? Humor me. I hesitated, then spoke quietly. I failed to shift on my 18th birthday. In my pack, that's a sign of defect of a blocked wolf. The Alpha performed the rejection ceremony, severing my connection to the pack bond and condemning me to live without my wolf. And you felt the severing? Felt your wolf disappear? I paused, really thinking about it for the first time. I felt pain, terrible pain, like something being torn from my soul. And afterward, there was emptiness where the wolf presence should have been. But you never actually felt your wolf before the rejection, did you? Seraphine pressed. Because you'd never shifted. You'd never experienced that connection. No, I admitted slowly. But that was the point. I couldn't shift because my wolf was blocked. That's what the Alpha said. Seraphine's expression turned grim. There's another possibility. One that's been used historically to control omegas with powerful bloodlines. The blocking can be done artificially through poison administered over time. Poison that suppresses the wolf without killing the human, making it seem like a natural defect. My blood ran cold. You're saying someone poisoned me? Deliberately blocked my wolf? I'm saying it's possible. And given what happened to Prince Matthias, also poisoned, also separated from his wolf, the parallels are troubling. She moved to the window, looking out at the garden. The High Alpha has asked his best healers to examine you once we reach the capital. With your permission, of course. Why would anyone poison me? I asked, my mind reeling. I'm nobody, a low-ranking omega from a small pack. What would be the point? That, Seraphine said softly, is what we intend to discover. Dinner was a formal affair held in the inn's private dining room. The table was laden with more food than I'd seen in months: roasted meats, fresh bread, vegetables in rich sauces, fruit that must have cost a fortune this late in the season. I sat between Matthias and Seraphine, acutely aware of Aldrich's presence at the head of the table. He'd changed into formal attire that emphasized his powerful build, and his silver hair was loose around his shoulders. He looked every inch the High Alpha, commanding, dangerous, and impossibly attractive in a way that made my pulse race. Several times during the meal, I caught him watching me with that same intense focus. Not threatening, exactly, but deeply evaluating, as if he were trying to solve a complex puzzle. Kira makes the best healing tea, Matthias announced suddenly, drawing everyone's attention. She made some for her friend Marin, and it smelled amazing, like flowers and mint, and something else I couldn't identify. Chamomile, I supplied quietly, and a touch of lavender for calming. You learned this from your mother? Aldrich asked, speaking directly to me for the first time since we'd sat down. Yes, High Alpha. She was healer for our pack before she died. What pack? I hesitated. Shadow Pine. A small territory in the western mountains. Something flickered in Aldrich's eyes, recognition perhaps. Shadow Pine? Alpha Marcus leads that pack, if I recall correctly. He did, I confirmed. I don't know if he still does. I haven't been back in 3 years. And your mother? What was her name? Lyanna. The name felt strange on my tongue. I so rarely spoke of her anymore. Aldrich went very still. Around the table, I noticed several of his wolves exchange significant glances. Lyanna, Aldrich repeated slowly. Lyanna of Shadowpine. Silver blonde hair, eyes the color of spring grass, gifted healer known throughout the Western Territories. My heart began to pound. You knew her? I knew of her. Aldrich set down his wine glass with careful precision. She was renowned for her healing abilities. Some said she had a gift beyond normal wolves that she could sense illness before symptoms appeared, could brew remedies that worked like magic. His silver eyes pinned me in place. She was also rumored to be from an ancient bloodline, one that produced omegas of exceptional power. The room felt too small suddenly, the air too thick. I don't understand. My mother never spoke of any special bloodline. She was just a healer. Perhaps she had her reasons for secrecy, Aldrich said carefully. Powerful omegas are rare, Kira, and throughout history, they've been both revered and feared. Some packs tried to control them. Others sought to eliminate them entirely, seeing their power as a threat to traditional alpha dominance. Are you saying my mother was in danger? That someone wanted to... I couldn't finish the sentence. Aldrich's expression gentled slightly. I'm saying there are questions about your past that deserve answers. And I'm saying that the poison used on you and the poison used on my son share similarities that cannot be coincidence. Rowan leaned forward, his expression troubled. Hi, Alpha. Are you suggesting the same person was behind both attacks? I'm suggesting we should consider all possibilities. Aldrich's gaze never left my face. Including the possibility that someone has been systematically targeting powerful omegas, blocking their wolves, making them vulnerable. But why? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What would anyone gain? Control, Seraphine said grimly. An omega without a wolf is defenseless. Easy to manipulate, easy to discard. If someone wanted to eliminate threats to their power, making those threats appear defective would be an efficient strategy. Matthias had gone quiet beside me, his small hand finding mine under the table. I squeezed it gently, trying to offer comfort even as my own world tilted on its axis. Everything I'd believed about myself, about my rejection, my blocked wolf, my worthlessness, might be built on lies, on deliberate sabotage by someone who'd seen me as a threat. When we reach the capital, Aldrich said, his tone leaving no room for argument, my healers will examine you thoroughly. If your wolf was blocked artificially, there may be ways to reverse it, to restore what was taken from you. Hope flared in my chest, painful and fierce. And if it was natural, if I really am just defective, then you are still the woman who saved my son. Aldrich's voice softened almost imperceptibly. Still worthy of protection and honor. Your wolf doesn't define your value, Kira. Your actions do. The sincerity in his words made my throat tight with emotion. I looked away, blinking rapidly against the tears that threatened to fall. We finished the meal in relative silence, though I felt Aldrich's attention on me like a physical weight. When Matthias began to yawn, Seraphine excused herself to take him to bed, leaving me alone with Aldrich and his remaining guards. Walk with me, Aldrich said, rising from the table. Again, not a request. The inn had a small garden behind it, barely more than a courtyard with some flowering plants and a bench beneath a trellis. But it offered privacy, which I suspected was Aldrich's goal. He led me there in silence, his presence overwhelming in the confined space. When we reached the bench, he gestured for me to sit, then surprised me by settling beside me, rather than standing in the dominant position I'd expected. You're afraid, he observed quietly. I considered denying it, then decided honesty was safer. Yes. Of me? Of everything. I met his gaze, finding it easier in the dim light of the garden. A month ago I was nobody, a rejected omega barely surviving in a border town. Now I'm told I might be from some powerful bloodline, that my wolf might not be truly gone, that I'm somehow connected to a conspiracy involving the High Alpha's son. It's overwhelming. I imagine it is. Aldrich studied me in the moonlight, and I was struck again by how handsome he was, how the silver in his hair and eyes seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, but you're handling it with remarkable grace. I'm terrified, I admitted. I'm just good at hiding it. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. That, too, is a kind of strength. He paused, then asked, Do you feel it, when you're near Matthias? I didn't pretend not to understand. Yes, a warmth, a sense of connection. Like something inside me recognizes him. That's the pack bond, Aldrich said softly. Or the beginning of one. Matthias feels it too, that's why he's been so attached to you since we found him. His wolf recognizes you as pack, even though you haven't formally been accepted into my court. But I don't have a wolf, I protested. How can I have a pack bond? Your wolf is still there, Kira. Blocked, suppressed, but there. I can sense it. His hand moved, hovering near mine on the bench but not quite touching. May I? I wasn't sure what he was asking permission for, but I nodded. Aldrich's hand closed around mine, and the effect was instantaneous. That warmth I'd felt with Matthias exploded into something overwhelming, a rush of sensation that made me gasp. Heat flooded through me, starting where our skin touched and spreading throughout my entire body. And deep inside, where there had been emptiness for 3 years, something stirred, something wild and powerful that I'd thought lost forever. My wolf. Aldrich's eyes widened, his pupils dilating. You feel that? What's happening? I whispered, unable to look away from his face. The mate bond. His voice had gone rough, almost. A growl. The recognition of true mates. It's awakening your wolf, calling to it, trying to break through whatever barrier was put in place. Mate bond. The words echoed in my mind, impossible and terrifying and somehow right. But that's... I struggled to form coherent thoughts through the haze of sensation. You're the High Alpha. I'm nobody. We can't be. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. Aldrich interrupted, his thumb stroking across my knuckles in a gesture that sent shivers through me. When she creates a mate bond, it's for a reason. Rank doesn't matter. Status doesn't matter. Only the bond matters. I wanted to pull away, to deny what was happening, but I couldn't. The feeling of my wolf stirring after 3 years of silence was too precious, too powerful to reject. This is why Matthias bonded to you so quickly, Aldrich continued, his voice gentler now. He sensed the mate bond between us before either of us understood it. Children often recognize these connections before adults do. They're not clouded by doubt or social expectations. What does this mean? I asked, my voice small. Aldrich released my hand slowly, though I could see the effort it cost him. The loss of contact made me want to reach for him again, which terrified me. It means, he said carefully, that you have choices to make. The mate bond is forming, but it's not complete, not yet. You can choose to accept it or reject it. No one will force you. You wouldn't force me? Never. The certainty in his voice left no room for doubt. You've had too many choices stolen from you already. I won't take more. I looked down at my hands, trying to process everything. A mate bond, with the High Alpha, with a man so far above my station that the very idea should be laughable. But it didn't feel laughable. It felt right, like a puzzle piece sliding into place. I need time, I said finally, to think, to understand what this means. Of course. Aldrich rose from the bench, offering me his hand to help me up. When I took it, that warmth flared again, but less overwhelming this time. We have 4 more days of travel. Use that time to consider, ask questions. Know that whatever you decide, I'll respect it. As we walked back toward the inn, I couldn't help but notice how he positioned himself slightly in front of me, his body a shield against any potential threat. Protective instincts, already activating because of the mate bond. And deep inside, my wolf stirred again, responding to his proximity with something that felt like recognition, like coming home. The next 3 days passed in a blur of travel and revelation. Aldrich kept his distance, giving me space to think, but I caught him watching me with barely concealed longing. Matthias, meanwhile, had become my shadow, chattering endlessly and insisting I sit with him during meals. Seraphine and Rowan treated me with new respect, addressing me formally, and deferring to my preferences. It was disconcerting, being treated as someone important after a lifetime of being dismissed. On the 4th day, as the capital city came into view, Seraphine pulled me aside. I need to prepare you, she said seriously. The court will react strongly to your presence. Many will question why the High Alpha brought an unknown Omega into his household. Some will see you as a threat. Because of the mate bond? Because of what the mate bond implies. Seraphine chose her words carefully. If Aldrich claims you as his mate, you'll become Luna, the highest-ranking female in the kingdom. You'll have power over territories, Influence over policy, control over resources. There are many who won't welcome that shift. My stomach knotted with anxiety. I don't want power. I just want to understand what happened to me, to see if my wolf can be restored. What you want may not matter to those who see you as a threat, Seraphine warned. Be careful, Kira. Watch what you say and who you trust. Until your wolf is restored and you're formally claimed, you're vulnerable. Her words proved prophetic. We arrived at the capital as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The city was enormous, easily 10 times the size of any settlement I'd seen, with buildings that rose 3 and 4 stories high. At its center stood the royal palace, a massive structure of white stone and dark wood that seemed to glow in the fading light. Crowds had gathered to see the High Alpha's return, cheering as our contingent passed through the gates. But I noticed the way some faces changed when they saw me in the carriage with Matthias. Curiosity shifting to suspicion, welcome transforming to hostility. A rejected Omega, arriving with their prince. It must have looked suspicious indeed. The palace interior was even more magnificent than its exterior, soaring ceilings, tapestries depicting wolf legends, windows of colored glass that cast rainbow patterns across marble floors. Servants in formal livery bowed as we passed, their expressions carefully neutral. Aldrich led us through corridors that seemed to go on forever, finally stopping at a set of ornate double doors. These will be your rooms, he said, gesturing for servants to open the doors. You'll have privacy here, and guards posted outside for your protection. Matthias's quarters are just down the hall, and my own are, he paused, nearby. The rooms were stunning. A sitting area with comfortable furniture and a fireplace, a bedroom with a bed large enough for 4 people, a washing room with an actual bathtub built into the floor, and what looked like a small study filled with books. It's too much, I protested. It's appropriate for someone under my protection, Aldrich corrected firmly. And for... He trailed off, leaving the rest unspoken, for his potential mate. Rest tonight, he continued. Tomorrow my healers will examine you, and tomorrow evening there will be a formal dinner to introduce you to the court. Will they know? I asked quietly. About the mate bond? They'll suspect. Aldrich's expression was unreadable. But I won't confirm anything until you've made your choice. You have my word. After he left, Seraphine helped me prepare for bed, showing me where everything was and explaining how to summon servants if I needed anything. When she finally withdrew, leaving me alone in rooms larger than any house I'd ever lived in, the reality of my situation hit me. I was in the High Alpha's palace. The mate bond was forming between us. And tomorrow, I would face healers who might be able to restore my wolf or confirm that I was truly broken beyond repair. I should have slept, but fear kept me awake, pacing the ornate rooms and trying to make sense of everything. Around midnight, I heard it. A sound from outside my window, faint but distinct. Footsteps, a whisper of fabric against stone. Someone was climbing up into my window. I froze, heart hammering. My rooms were on the 3rd floor. No one should be able to reach my window unless they were deliberately climbing, unless they were specifically targeting me. The window opened silently, and a figure slipped inside. Female, slender, dressed in dark clothing that blended with shadows. She moved with the fluid grace of a trained wolf, her eyes gleaming as they adjusted to the dim light. Then she saw me standing by the bed, and smiled, a cold smile that held no warmth. "Hello, little Omega," she said softly. "You and I need to have a conversation about your future. Or rather, the lack thereof." She raised her hand, and I saw the glint of a blade. "Let's make this quick, shall we? I'd hate for the High Alpha to interrupt before I finish what we started 3 years ago. 3 years ago, when my wolf had been blocked, this woman, whoever she was, had been behind my poisoning, and now she was here to finish the job. Before I could scream, before I could run." She lunged. The assassin moved with lethal speed, her blade arcing toward my throat. Instinct took over. I threw myself backward, crashing into the bedside table as the knife whistled past where my neck had been seconds before. "You're quicker than expected," she said, circling me with predatory grace. "But it won't matter. You should have died 3 years ago with your mother. This is just finishing what we started. My mother. The words hit me like a physical blow. You killed her? The poison was meant for both of you. Her voice held no remorse, only cold calculation. Your mother died quickly, but you survived. Weakened, but alive. A mistake I'm here to correct. She lunged again, and this time I had nowhere to go. The blade drove toward my heart and stopped. A massive silver wolf had materialized between us, seeming to come from nowhere. Aldrich. Even in wolf form, I recognized him, the same powerful build, the same commanding presence, the same silver eyes that now burned with protective fury. He didn't hesitate. His jaws closed around the assassin's arm, bones crunching audibly. She screamed, dropping the knife, and tried to shift into her own wolf form. But Aldrich was faster, stronger, his teeth finding her throat and ending her scream permanently. The violence was over in seconds. The assassin's body hit the floor with a dull thud, lifeless. Aldrich shifted back to human form, his chest heaving, blood on his mouth. His eyes found me immediately, wild with concern. Are you hurt? I shook my head, unable to speak, unable to process what had just happened. The doors burst open and guards flooded in, led by Seraphine with her weapon drawn. She took in the scene, the dead assassin, Aldrich's protective stance over me, my white face and trembling hands, and began barking orders. Secure the palace, check every room, find out how she got in, and if she was working alone. But Aldrich ignored them all. He moved to me, his hands, framing my face with surprising gentleness given the violence he'd just displayed. Kira, look at me. I met his silver eyes, seeing fury and fear and something deeper that made my chest ache. She said she killed my mother, I whispered, that the poison was meant for both of us. Aldrich's jaw tightened. We'll find out who sent her, who's behind this. I promise you. She came to finish the job. My voice sounded distant, shocked. Because I survived. Because I'm here. And I won't let anyone hurt you again. The vow in his words was absolute. Never again. Something inside me cracked at the raw emotion in his voice. And in that crack, something else stirred. Something wild and powerful that had been dormant for 3 years. My wolf. It rose inside me like a tidal wave, breaking through whatever barrier had held it captive. I gasped as sensation flooded through me, the wolf's consciousness merging with my own, her strength flowing into my limbs, her senses sharpening my perception of the world. I could smell everything suddenly. The copper tang of blood, the fear scent of the guards, the complex mixture of pine and winter that was uniquely Aldrich. And beneath it all, I could smell the mate bond, that golden thread connecting us, singing with recognition. Aldrich, I breathed, wonder replacing shock. My wolf. She's here. I can feel her. His eyes widened, then blazed with fierce joy. The trauma broke through the block. Your wolf fought her way free to protect you. Around us, I heard gasps from the guards. Seraphine stepped closer, her expression awed. Her eyes, she said softly. They're glowing. I looked down at my hands and saw faint silver light emanating from my skin. The same silver as Matthias's eyes, as Aldrich's eyes. Ancient bloodline. I remembered him saying about my mother. Omegas of exceptional power. What's happening to me? I asked, watching the light pulse with each heartbeat. Your true nature is awakening, Aldrich said, his voice rough with emotion. The power that was always yours but was hidden, suppressed. His hands tightened on my face. You're magnificent. The sincerity in his words broke something loose inside me. All the years of believing I was worthless, defective, broken. Tears spilled down my cheeks, and Aldrich pulled me against his chest, holding me while I shook with the force of emotions I'd suppressed for so long. My wolf pressed against my consciousness, offering comfort and strength. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt whole. Seraphine cleared her throat gently. High Alpha, we should move her to more secure rooms, and the court needs to be informed of the attack. Aldrich nodded, though his arms didn't loosen around me. Prepare the Luna's quarters. Post triple guards. And summon my healers. I want Kira examined immediately to ensure there are no lingering effects from the poison. Luna's quarters. The word sent a jolt through me. Those rooms were reserved for the High Alpha's mate. I pulled back to look at Aldrich's face. I haven't accepted the bond yet. I haven't made my choice. I know. His thumb brushed away my tears with infinite gentleness. But you'll be safest there, and safety is my priority right now. The rest. He paused, emotion flickering across his features. The rest can wait until you're ready. The Luna's quarters were connected to Aldrich's own rooms by a private corridor, allowing him to reach me quickly if danger threatened again. They were even more luxurious than the guest rooms clearly designed for someone of the highest rank, with sitting areas and studies and a bedroom that felt like something from a dream. But I barely noticed the opulence. My attention was focused inward, on the miracle of my wolf's presence after 3 years of emptiness. She was there, really there, a consciousness separate from my own but intimately connected, offering her strength and instincts and fierce protective nature. She paced restlessly inside me, agitated by the attack, by the mate bond calling to her, by years of forced silence finally broken. Aldrich's healers arrived within the hour, 3 elderly wolves with kind faces and gentle hands. They examined me thoroughly, taking samples of my blood and hair, testing my reflexes and senses, asking careful questions about my medical history. The eldest, a woman named Sage with silver hair and warm brown eyes, finally sat back with a troubled expression. "The poison in your system is extraordinarily complex," she said. "A mixture of nightshade, wolfsbane, and something else, a rare herb called moonveil that only grows in the northern mountains. It's been specifically designed to block the connection between human and wolf consciousness without killing either." "Can it be fully cleared?" Aldrich demanded. He'd refused to leave during the examination, standing vigil near the door with barely contained tension. "With time and treatment, yes," Sage replied. "The trauma of the attack has already broken the primary block, allowing her wolf to surface. But there are still traces of poison in her system that will need to be purged. It could take weeks, possibly months, for her to achieve full strength." "How long have I been poisoned?" I asked quietly. Sage hesitated, exchanging glances with the other healers. "Based on the levels in your system and the way certain tissues have been affected, I'd estimate you were dosed regularly for at least a year before your rejection ceremony. Possibly longer. A year. Someone had been poisoning me for a year, slowly blocking my wolf, ensuring I'd fail to shift on my 18th birthday, ensuring I'd be rejected and cast out, vulnerable and alone." "Who?" The word came out as a growl, my wolf's fury bleeding into my voice. "Who would do this?" "That," Aldrich said grimly, "is what we're going to find out. Seraphine is interrogating the palace staff as we speak, looking for anyone with connections to Shadowpine Pack or access to Moonveil herb." He moved closer, his presence comforting despite the violence I knew he was capable of. "But first, you need to rest. Let the healers begin treatment." "I can't rest," I protested. "Someone tried to kill me tonight. Someone who's been orchestrating attacks for years. How can I rest knowing they're still out there?" "Because you're safe here." Aldrich's hand found mine, that now familiar warmth sparking between us. "I have 50 guards posted around these rooms. Seraphine herself is leading your security detail. No one will reach you again." "You can't protect me forever," I said, but even as I spoke, I knew it wasn't true. The mate bond pulsed between us, and I understood with sudden clarity that Aldrich would protect me until his dying breath. That it wasn't duty or obligation, but a fundamental part of who he was. My mate. The thought no longer terrified me. Instead, it felt right. Inevitable. "Watch me," Aldrich said softly, and the absolute certainty in his voice made my wolf purr with satisfaction. The healers left me with detailed instructions and several vials of bitter-tasting medicine designed to purge the remaining poison. Aldrich remained, settling into a chair near my bed with clear intention to stand guard through the night. "You don't have to stay," I said, though part of me desperately wanted him to. "Yes, I do." His silver eyes held mine. "Someone tried to kill my mate tonight. There's nowhere else I'd be. Your mate. Not potential mate or possible mate. Just mate." The simple claim made something in my chest warm. I haven't officially accepted the bond, I reminded him gently. I know. A small smile touched his lips. But your wolf has. I can feel her recognition, her acceptance. She knows what your mind is still questioning. He was right. My wolf had no doubts about Aldrich, about the mate bond, about our future together. She pushed at my consciousness, urging me to accept what she already knew to be true. Tell me about the mate bond, I said quietly. The real bond, not just the recognition we've been feeling. What happens when it's fully accepted? Aldrich leaned forward, his expression serious. Complete bonds are sacred, permanent. When two mates accept each other fully, they're connected at the deepest level, able to sense each other's emotions, sometimes even thoughts. They're stronger together than apart, their wolves complementing each other. He paused. And they're marked. The male bites the female's neck during the claiming ceremony, leaving a permanent mark that tells the world she's taken. Protected, cherished. And if one mate dies? I had to ask, had to know the risks. Pain flickered across his features. The surviving mate feels it. The bond breaks, leaving emptiness that never fully heals. Some survive it, others. He didn't finish, but I understood. Your first mate, I said softly. Matthias's mother. You loved her. I respected her, Aldrich corrected gently. Our marriage was political, an alliance between powerful packs. We grew fond of each other, produced an heir. But it wasn't a mate bond. When she died in childbirth, I grieved for her, for Matthias growing up without his mother. But I didn't feel that soul-deep breaking. His eyes found mine. This bond, what I feel with you, it's different. Deeper, more essential. If I lost you now, he didn't finish, but the raw emotion in his voice said everything. The assassin tonight, I said, changing the subject before I could overthink what I was about to do. She mentioned finishing what was started, which means this conspiracy goes beyond just me. I know. Aldrich's expression hardened. The same poison was used on you and Matthias, the same pattern blocking wolves, creating vulnerability. Someone is systematically targeting powerful bloodlines, and we need to know why. A thought occurred to me, chilling in its implications. What if it's not about individual targets? What if someone is trying to weaken your entire bloodline? First Matthias, making him vulnerable to kidnapping, then me, who they couldn't have known would be your mate but who comes from a powerful Omega line. Who else might they target? Aldrich's eyes widened with realization. Other relatives. Wolves with royal blood who could challenge for succession. He stood abruptly. I need to send warnings to my cousins, my uncle, anyone who could be at risk. Go, I urged. I'll be safe here with the guards. He hesitated, clearly torn between political necessity and the mate bond's demand to stay close to me. Finally, he leaned down and pressed a kiss to my forehead, a gesture so gentle it made my heart ache. I'll return within the hour, he promised. And tomorrow, we'll formally introduce you to the court. Let them see that you're under my protection, that harming you means facing my wrath. After he left, I lay in the enormous bed, my wolf prowling, restlessly inside my consciousness. She wanted Aldrich back, wanted the mate bond completed, wanted the security of his claim. And I realized I wanted the same thing. The attack tonight had clarified everything. Life was fragile, dangerous, unpredictable. I could spend years questioning whether I was worthy of being the High Alpha's mate, whether our ranks were too different, whether I deserved the happiness the bond offered. Or I could accept the gift the moon goddess had given us and face whatever challenges came together. My wolf howled her approval at the decision, and I smiled into the darkness. Tomorrow, I would tell Aldrich I accepted the bond, that I chose him, chose us, chose the future we could build together. True to his word, Aldrich returned within the hour, settling back into his vigil position. But this time, I patted the bed beside me. You should rest too, I said softly. You can't protect me if you're exhausted. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. He removed his boots and stretched out on top of the covers, maintaining a respectful distance but close enough that I could feel his warmth. Thank you, I whispered, for saving me tonight, for believing in me, for being patient while I figured things out. Always, he murmured, his hand finding mine in the darkness. I fell asleep like that, holding my mate's hand, my wolf finally at peace. The formal dinner the next evening was terrifying. The great hall was filled with noble wolves alphas from territories across the kingdom, high-ranking betas and their families, courtiers and advisors who'd served the royal family for generations, and all of them staring at me. I wore the finest dress I'd ever seen, deep silver that matched my newly awakened wolf's glow, with intricate embroidery that caught the candlelight. My hair had been arranged in elaborate braids by servants who seemed both nervous and excited to be dressing someone under the High Alpha's protection. Aldrich appeared at my door precisely at sunset, magnificent in formal black with silver accents that emphasized his coloring. His eyes widened when he saw me, heat flaring in their depths. "Beautiful," he breathed. "Absolutely beautiful." Matthias bounced beside him, dressed in miniature formal wear that made him look adorable. "You look like a princess, Kira. Like the ones in the stories." I smiled at his enthusiasm, some of my nervousness easing. "You look very handsome yourself, Matthias." He beamed, then grabbed my hand. "I get to escort you into dinner. Papa said so. Everyone will know you're important because you're walking with us." The great hall fell silent when we entered. Every eye tracked our progress as Aldrich led me to the high table, Matthias holding my other hand and chattering about how excited he was for the feast. Aldrich stood at the center of the high table, his presence commanding immediate attention. When he spoke, his voice carried throughout the hall. "My people, I present to you Kira of Shadowpine, the woman who saved my son's life at great personal cost, the woman who carries the blood of ancient healers and demonstrates courage that puts many warriors to shame." He paused, his silver eyes finding mine. He paused. "And the woman the moon goddess has chosen as my mate." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Whispers erupted, spreading like wildfire. Aldrich continued, his voice hardening. "Last night, an assassin entered the palace and attempted to murder Kira. This same conspiracy poisoned my son, blocked Kira's wolf for 3 years, and murdered her mother. I tell you this now so there can be no doubt. Kira is under my absolute protection. To threaten her is to threaten me. To harm her is to commit treason punishable by death." He turned to me then, and I saw the question in his eyes. The offer he was making, I could refuse, could maintain the pretense of uncertainty for propriety's sake, or I could claim him as publicly as he'd just claimed me. I stood, my wolf, lending me courage, and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "I accept the mate bond. I accept Aldrich as my mate, my alpha, my future." I met his gaze steadily, and I would be honored to stand beside him as Luna. The hall erupted. Some cheered, celebrating the news. Others looked shocked, dismayed, or calculating, but I barely noticed them, because Aldrich was moving toward me, his expression blazing with joy and possession and love. He pulled me into his arms, and in front of the entire court, kissed me. It wasn't gentle or chaste. It was claiming, branding, a promise of everything to come. And when we finally broke apart, his voice was rough with emotion. "The claiming ceremony will be held at the next full moon," he announced. "1 week from tonight, all are invited to witness the Luna taking her rightful place." Matthias launched himself at us, wrapping his arms around both our waists. "Does this mean Kira gets to stay forever? That she's really going to be my new mama?" Aldrich looked down at his son with infinite gentleness. "If she'll have us, both of us." I knelt down to Matthias's level, my heart full to bursting. "I would love nothing more than to be your family, yours and your father's, forever." The boy's joy was incandescent, and behind me, I felt Aldrich's hand rest on my shoulder, possessive, protective, loving. This was my future, my pack, my home. Epilogue 1 year later. I stood in the palace gardens, watching Matthias practice his shifting with a group of young wolves his age. At 9 years old, he'd mastered the transformation completely, his silver wolf form strong and healthy. My hand rested on my swollen belly, where our child, a daughter, the healers had confirmed grew strong. She would be born with the silver eyes of royal blood and the healing gifts of my mother's line, a bridge between 2 ancient bloodlines. "You should be resting." Aldrich's voice came from behind me, warm with affection and exasperation. Sage's orders. I leaned back against my mate's chest, sighing contentedly as his arms wrapped around me. I'm pregnant, not fragile. My wolf is strong now, remember? Fully healed. It was true. The poison had been completely purged from my system within 3 months of beginning treatment. My wolf had grown stronger every day, and I'd discovered gifts I'd never known. I possessed the ability to sense illness in others, to accelerate healing with my touch, to brew remedies that worked like magic, just like my mother. The conspiracy had been fully uncovered. The assassin who'd attacked me had been working for Alpha Marcus of Shadowpine, my former Alpha, who'd been jealous of my mother's power and afraid I would inherit it. He'd poisoned us both, killed my mother, and tried to eliminate me as a threat. He'd also been behind Matthias's kidnapping, hoping to destabilize Aldrich's rule and create an opportunity for his own ambitious rise to power. He was dead now, executed for treason after a trial that had lasted mere hours. His pack had been absorbed into Aldrich's territory, his supporters cast out as rogues. Justice had been swift and absolute. "What are you thinking about?" Aldrich asked, pressing a kiss to the claiming mark on my neck, the permanent bite that proclaimed me his mate, his Luna, his forever. "How far I've come," I answered honestly. "A year ago, I was nobody. A rejected Omega who'd given up hope of ever having a pack, a home, a future. Now I'm Luna of the largest territory in the kingdom, mate to the High Alpha, mother to Matthias, and our daughter-to-be. It feels like a dream." "It's not a dream," Aldrich murmured against my ear. "It's destiny. The moon goddess knew exactly what she was doing when she brought you into my life, into Matthias's life." His hand covered mine on my belly. "Into our daughter's life." Matthias noticed us and came running over, shifting mid-stride back to human form with the easy grace of youth. "Mama, did you see? I held the shift for a whole hour this time." "Mama." The title still made my heart swell every time he used it. "I saw. Sweetheart, you were magnificent." He grinned, then placed his hand on my belly, his expression going soft with wonder. "Is she awake? Can I talk to her?" "Always," I assured him. He leaned close, speaking directly to my stomach. "Hi, little sister. It's your big brother, Matthias. I can't wait to meet you. I'm going to teach you everything: how to shift, how to hunt, how to be brave like Mama. You're going to be amazing. I just know it." Aldrich's arms tightened around me, and I felt his emotion through our bond: overwhelming love, fierce protectiveness, gratitude for the family we'd built together. This was my life now, not the one I'd imagined during those dark years of rejection and isolation, but something infinitely better. I'd traded my freedom to save a starving child at the market, and in return, I'd gained everything I'd ever dreamed of and more. A mate who loved me with an intensity that still took my breath away. A son who'd claimed me as his mother from the moment we met. A daughter on the way. A pack that accepted me. A position that allowed me to help others as my mother once had. And most importantly, I'd regained myself. My wolf, my strength, my certainty that I was worthy of love and belonging. The moon goddess truly did work in mysterious ways. "I love you," I whispered to Aldrich, turning in his arms to face him. His silver eyes blazed with the same emotion. "And I love you, my mate, my Luna, my miracle." He kissed me then, gentle and deep, while our son made exaggerated gagging sounds and our daughter kicked in my belly, already making her presence known. This was my happy ending, but more than that, it was my beginning, and I would spend every day of forever grateful for the choice I'd made in that marketplace, the choice that had led me here, to this life, to this love, to home. 5 years later. The council chamber buzzed with tension as I took my seat beside Aldrich at the head of the table. Outside, the first snow of winter was falling, blanketing the capital in white. Inside, 12 territorial alphas had gathered for the annual summit, a tradition that had grown more important since I'd become Luna. "The healing centers are thriving," I reported, my voice steady with the confidence I'd built over 5 years of leadership. "We've established facilities in every major territory, training healers in the techniques my mother passed down. Infant mortality has dropped by half. The poisoning incidents that plagued our kingdom have been reduced to nearly zero. Alpha Torsten of the Northern Reaches nodded approvingly. The Luna's initiatives have saved countless lives in my territory. My people are grateful. I smiled, remembering how terrified I'd been of these powerful wolves when I'd first become Luna. Now they were allies, colleagues, sometimes even friends. Respect had been earned through 5 years of tireless work, as of proving my worth not through rank but through results. "There's another matter," Aldrich said, his hand finding mine under the table, a gesture of unity we'd perfected over the years. "Several packs have reported young Omegas showing unusual abilities, healing gifts, prophetic dreams, extraordinary strength. We believe these are descendants of the ancient bloodlines that were nearly wiped out decades ago." Murmurs rippled around the table. The discovery that powerful Omega bloodlines had been systematically targeted and suppressed had shocked the kingdom when we'd uncovered the full extent of the conspiracy. Marcus hadn't been working alone. He'd been part of a network of alphas, afraid of Omega power, afraid of change. "The Luna has proposed establishing a sanctuary," Aldrich continued. "A place where these young Omegas can train safely. Learn to control their gifts without fear of persecution or exploitation." "I support this initiative," Alpha Vera of the Eastern Forests said. Immediately. She was one of our strongest allies, a progressive leader who'd championed Omega rights from the beginning. "Too many gifted wolves have been lost to fear and ignorance. It's time we protected them instead of punishing them." One by one, the alphas voiced their support. The vote was unanimous. As the meeting concluded and the alphas departed, I felt a surge of satisfaction. This was why I'd accepted the mate bond, why I'd stepped into this role despite my fears. Not for power or prestige, but for the ability to protect others like me, Omegas who'd been cast aside, who'd been told they were worthless. "You're magnificent when you're being political," Aldrich murmured in my ear as we walked through the palace corridors. "Commanding, beautiful. Every inch the Luna." I laughed, leaning into his warmth. "I learned from the best. We found our children in the Great Hall. Matthias, now 14 and nearly as tall as his father, was teaching his younger siblings the finer points of chess strategy. Aurora, our 5-year-old daughter with silver eyes and my blonde hair, was arguing that knights should be able to move differently. And little Damon, just 3 years old with his father's dark coloring, was trying to eat one of the game pieces. "Damon, no," Aurora scolded, snatching the piece away. "That's not food." "But it's shiny," Damon protested, his lower lip trembling. I swept him into my arms, pressing kisses to his chubby cheeks until he giggled. "Everything is shiny to you, my little magpie." Matthias looked up, his expression lighting when he saw us. At 14, he was already showing signs of the leader he'd become: thoughtful, strategic, compassionate. "Mama, did the council approve the sanctuary?" "They did," I confirmed, my heart swelling with pride at his interest in governance. He would make an extraordinary alpha someday. Good. His jaw set with determination that reminded me so much of Aldrich. "I've been researching historical accounts of Omega persecution. It's worse than we thought. Hundreds of bloodlines were eliminated over the centuries. What you're doing, what we're all doing, it matters." Aurora abandoned the chessboard to wrap her arms around my legs. "Will I go to the sanctuary, Mama, when I'm older?" I stroked her silver hair, so like her father's. "Only if you want to, sweetheart. You're safe here, always. But if you want to learn from other gifted Omegas, to understand your abilities better, then yes, the sanctuary will be there for you." She'd inherited my healing gifts in full measure, along with something extra, the ability to sense emotions, to calm distressed wolves with nothing but her presence. Already at 5, she was extraordinary. "I want to go," she declared solemnly. "I want to learn everything. Then I can help people like you do, Mama." Aldrich caught my eye, and I saw the same emotion reflected there that I felt: overwhelming love for these children we'd created, pride in who they were becoming, gratitude for the life we'd built. That evening, after the children were asleep, Aldrich and I stood on our private balcony overlooking the capital. Lights twinkled throughout the city, families gathering in warm homes, the kingdom peaceful and prosperous. Do you ever regret it? Aldrich asked softly, pulling me against his chest. Accepting the bond? Taking on all this responsibility? I turned in his arms, meeting his silver gaze, those eyes that still made my heart race after 5 years of marriage. Never. Not for a single moment. Not even when the council sessions run long? When the political maneuvering gets exhausting? When being Luna means sacrificing privacy and freedom? Especially not then, I said firmly. Because every sacrifice means I can help someone else. Every political battle won means another Omega who won't be rejected for being different. Every healing center we build means another child who'll survive illness that would have killed them. I cupped his face in my hands. You gave me purpose, Aldrich. You, Matthias. Our children, you gave me everything. You gave us everything, he corrected, his voice rough with emotion. You gave Matthias a mother who loves him fiercely. You gave me a mate who challenges me, supports me, makes me better. You gave our kingdom a Luna, who leads with compassion and strength. His thumb brushed across my claiming mark. You gave me a reason to believe in the moon goddess's plan. I kissed him then, deep and thorough, pouring 5 years of love and partnership into it. When we broke apart, I rested my forehead against his. Thank you, I whispered, for seeing me when I was invisible, for protecting me when I was vulnerable, for loving me when I couldn't love myself. Thank you, he echoed, for being brave enough to save a starving child in a marketplace, for trading your freedom for his safety, for choosing us when you could have walked away. We stood there as the snow fell around us, 2 mates who'd found each other against impossible odds, a rejected Omega and a high Alpha, brought together by a lost prince and the moon goddess's design. My journey had started with a single choice to help a hungry child who needed me. That choice had led me through darkness and danger, through self-discovery and healing, to this moment, to this life, to this love. I'd thought I was trading my freedom that day in the marketplace, but I'd actually been trading my chains for wings. And now, standing in my mate's arms with our children sleeping safely and our kingdom thriving, I understood the truth. Real freedom wasn't the absence of responsibility. It was finding purpose worth fighting for, people worth protecting, a life worth living. I had all of that and more. I love you, I told Aldrich, the words I'd spoken thousands of times but which never lost their meaning. And I love you, he replied, as he always did. My mate, my Luna, my forever. The snow continued to fall, blanketing the kingdom in peace. And in the High Alpha's arms, under the moon goddess's watchful eye, I was finally completely home. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.